We're there. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Northlake County Hospital District. I would like Mr. Trainer to come up, and he's a first responder, to lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to take a second and note that I have met Mr. Trainer, and he actually was at 9/11. So I just want to thank him for his service also. We need a moment of silence. If we could just take a moment, please. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Kirsty, would you like to do roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Harper? Present. Ms. Hooper?
Here.
Mr. Hurley?
Here.
Ms. Price?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now we'll do the presentation and approval of minutes from August 31st. I need a motion to approve or any changes. Do we need to do
Move.
changes first or just approve? We already, who was first? Ralph? Who's second? Mr. Hurley, thank you. Any discussion or corrections to the minutes? I see none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Do we have any additional requests for funding? I see no. Ms. Kirsty, would you like to do the next, the name of the taxing authority, the
Yes.
rollback rate?
Yes, ma'am. The name of the taxing authority is the Northlake County Hospital District. The rollback rate is .4534 mils. The levy of .40 mils represents a decrease in the property tax levy of minus 11.78% over the rollback rate of .4534 mils.
Thank you. So we're on to tab 7, which is waiver of the reading of the entire proposed resolution. Some of our new members, would you like it to be read, or I need a motion to just waive it?
Can I make a motion as I'm a new member?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to waive that reading of the resolution.
I need a,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I just wanted to make it that opportunity for you and Mr. Hurley in case.
So
Okay.
just read them by title.
Yes.
Proposed Resolution 2023-01, resolution of the Northlake County Hospital District providing for the adoption of the millage rate for the 2023-2024 fiscal year.
Thank you. At this time, we are open to public comments on Resolution 2023-01, setting the millage. Do we have any public discussion tonight? I see no. We will go on. You ready? Okay. I'm on 9. Oh, sorry, I missed a whole spot. Board action on resolution number 2023-01, motion to adopt the tentative millage rate by separate vote.
You have to have a second. You have to have a
Second.
And then I do a vote by separate.
Okay, I need, well, we need a first. We didn't have a first.
correct.
Yeah, I need a first on that.
A motion. I'll make it.
Okay, and a second.
So moved.
Okay, now you're going to read that, and then we're open for discussion. Is that correct?
Well, actually, we're on voting, on separate voting, but let's have the discussion
Okay.
first on this particular resolution.
Right, okay. So board members, we're open for discussion on this particular resolution, which is to do the .4 mil. Is that correct, Ms. Kirsty? Yes, that we're open
Yes.
for discussion.
Madam Chair, to say that I'm a little disappointed with this would be an understatement. Acting in good faith, the citizens of North Lake County came together and by a resounding majority voted and agreed that it would be in the best interest of the county, and they would be willing to bear the expense and take care of our sick friends and neighbors who can't afford health insurance. They understood the way they would pay for this care. They knew it would show up on their tax bill every year. So the way it works, if I understand it correctly, is that the hospitals and clinics treat these people and hopefully nurse them back to health, and the providers would in turn request this board to reimburse them for their costs. The Florida legislature has provided the funds allowing us to set a millage rate up to 1% that would more than cover the costs requested by the providers. This year, the providers have asked us to reimburse them to the tune of $8,704,364. The amount of money available to us by the state legislature would be $18,535,167, which would more than cover the request made by the providers plus our administrative costs. But some have decided to turn their backs on their purpose on this board and have advocated for lower taxes, which is not our job, but the job of Governor DeSantis and the politicians in Tallahassee. Our job is to assure the indigent citizens in North Lake County get health care and to reimburse the money our hospitals and clinics have already spent to do just that. We were told the preliminary millage the board approved on August 31st could not be changed. However, that vote was actually not conducted according to state statute. We should not have had that vote until after September 1st. So I believe we could, if we wanted to, call that vote null and void and approve a millage rate that would take care of our providers and allow us to look ourselves in the mirror knowing that we did what we took an oath to do. My hope is that each one of us on this board will reevaluate our purpose for serving on the board and do what we were elected to do. And I would further hope that anyone on this board who thinks we should not be true to our oath and reimburse our providers as mandated by the state legislature, or who might have an ulterior motive and want to be a tax reduction advocate or maybe even disband this board, maybe you should resign and make room for someone that will do what you don't have the courage to do. The current rate leaves us $609,025 short of providing reimbursement for our hospitals and clinics. I would hereby, if I'm in order, make a motion that we disannul the August 31st preliminary millage vote, which was, in my opinion, illegal, and revisit the millage rate.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Setting a tentative millage rate is not illegal. Every city council, every county commission has that opportunity to set a tentative millage rate.
Not before September 1st.
No, it has to be into Mr. Baker by September 1st. Is that right, Ms. Kirsty? That's what I was told.
It's my understanding that you vote for a tentative millage rate after September 1st. You vote for a tentative budget after September 1st, and then you do your final budget and final millage rate during the month of September. We have had some discussion with Ms. Catterson and Mr. White on this matter. It's our belief in talking with everyone that you can go higher than the .40 millage because that was a proposed millage and not a tentatively adopted millage rate. But I'll defer to Crippen over here. Donna, if you
I
have
would
some
like
comments.
to just interrupt a second. We did this last year, and there was no problem. I have been clearly told that any taxing district can set a tentative millage rate because I was told that it has to be into Mr. Baker before a certain time, so he can get out his trim notices.
You're correct, but it needs to be a proposed millage, not a tentative. Mr. Hurley is correct. You cannot vote on a tentative before September, but you can propose a millage rate. I will verify that with the trim people tomorrow. I've got all the instructions, and that's what it says, proposed up until September.
Okay, everything I read said tentative. Anyone else with any comments? Mr. Smith?
First of all, I want to say, this is in my notes, Mr. Hurley and I couldn't disagree more, but I consider him a friend. I believe he considers me a friend, and that's what we all are. I hope we're in this room, we're all friends. We have our different views and understandings of things, and I hope it'll continue that way. First, I want to thank Mr. Braun of UF Health for his perspective 2 weeks ago. While we may not, or he and I at least may not agree on the correctness of the legal confiscation of monies potentially and ultimately by force from citizens for private organizations, at least he acknowledges the fact that without the monies, this board has provided that the indigent residents will still receive adequate health care. That being the case, in my view, there is no need for the continuance of any of this board, much less the taxing the citizens of Lake County unnecessarily. The former CEO of UF Shands, Ed Jimenez, told me 2 years ago in his office that he in principle did not believe that ad valorem taxes should be used for hospital needs, but requested they be weaned from the taxpayer teat, not cut off cold turkey. This board did as he requested, giving approximately $5 million to each hospital over the past 2 years. And then 2 weeks ago, we had Mr. Abel Berry. Mr. Berry, who is obviously an otherwise seemingly intelligent individual, seemed to be of the mind that we are the trustees of Aetna or Blue Cross Blue Shield. First, sir, the monies we receive on this board for our services say quite otherwise. In addition, I believe I'm correct in stating that the policyholders of said companies choose to pay their premiums, not have them legislated by law from their bank accounts. Mr. Berry continues to miss the mark by asserting that in 2016, the voters spoke their mind. They did only in the sense that after a well-funded PR campaign, subsidized indirectly, if not directly, by the very monies we give them, that they receive for indigent care, voters did get to weigh in after 60 years of having no skin in the race. Problem is, as I said, for 60 years, yet you didn't hear a peep out of these people or Mr. Berry or anyone about the unfairness of all this until recent. The fact is, in 2020, there was an election where 3 like-minded board members were elected who honestly expressed their views at the time on their plans as board members, who joined Mrs. Price as guardians of the public purse and administering these monies. Our views were expressed prior to the election in an article on June 30th, 2020 in the Daily Commercial. So in terms of voting the will of the people, I believe the results of the 2020 supersede the results of 2016. I will spare you the whole 18 minutes of Mr. Berry's evisceration of the judgment and character of this board, except to add one other highlight of his attack 2 weeks ago, saying in false narrative number 4, he stated, "We don't need to pay the hospitals. They are required by law to provide care." He then immediately contradicts himself, saying, "This is in fact true, but very incomplete." So it sounds to me like Mr. Berry is saying that the so-called false narratives are not truly false, but simply misunderstandings on our part about our duty as we see it individually and collectively. The hospitals in the past have liked to bring a parade of good folks who were allegedly benefited from these forcibly extracted tax dollars, who now, thanks to Mr. Braun's honest acknowledgement, we now know would have received the same care whether the tax existed or not. So I'm not a big fan of anecdotal arguments. However, in the past 3 years, I personally had to use Advent Health Emergency Services twice due to kidney stone issues. The care I received as an outpatient emergency room patient was nothing short of horrific. I went home twice with a blood pressure of about 220/110, second time with the additional discomfort of dry heaves. The first time I requested a blanket numerous times in the course of about 2 hours, only finally getting one from the guy doing the x-rays, who also found my kidney stone. He was my one positive experience that night. The third time I had this issue, I refused to go to Waterman despite my wife's pleas. After calling one of her friends, she persuaded me to go to Blue Cedar in South Lake, an additional 20 miles from my home than Waterman. The care there at South Lake was phenomenal, in stark contrast to my neighborhood hospital. And may I add, they do not get subsidized by a tax. Governor Scott took care of that several years ago when he was in office. The standing order at my house going forward is that when I die, they can take my corpse to Waterman if they wish. However, despite my professional and personal animus at this institution of recent, my view in funding this tax is only principle related, in that I am wholly and consistently opposed to corporate welfare. The amount of money these special interests really want is roughly 20% of all the ad valorem taxes received from Northlake residents, which are correctly used to fund police, fire, EMS, constitutional offices, roads, sidewalks, parks, courts, pickleball courts, jail, vehicle maintenance, and many amenities that our local Board of County Commissioners do a great job in administering. So I will definitely be a no vote on any monies being collected, or as little as possible for these, what I believe is an incorrect usage of tax dollars being taken ad valorem wise. And I also call upon our local delegation, who I've contacted individually and collectively, Yarkovsky, Trudeau, McLean, and Baxley, to deep six the need for this board. This really should be a no-brainer, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Your mic's not on.
I would just like to say that I agree with Ralph pretty much. The only thing that I really think is the St. Luke's and the Community Care Center, they have all volunteer doctors. And so therefore, if there's any funding, that's who I would like to go to.
Thank you, Ms. Hooper.
Well, one thing on the funding, the tax was allocated for indigent funds towards both a hospital and the indigent care. There's probably also a gap, maybe I can get something from one of the administrators, but there's probably a gap where there's indigent care and people that are employed that wouldn't be actually covered, and they would try to collect on that. I'm sure there's a gap there. And you can probably, once you get up here, not right now, but just a second. But, the tax that was voted in that we're supposed to be supporting was put in place so we can support that gap. And people that have differences with the hospital care or with the vote, that's really not our position, as we're supposed to be kind of separate ourselves from those idealisms. And we're here to help with the people's vote that actually carried the vote to where we are today, working these dollars.
Thank you. Okay, so my comment is going to be very similar to last year. Several of the hospitals have large donors, and they get preferential treatment when they check into the hospitals. I found it. I dug and dug and dug, and I still have the paperwork from last year. Weekly, I get something from the hospitals asking me to donate to their cares. So my thing is that I will fully fund all clinics. I will not fully fund the hospitals. I will give them a small portion, as my view is that they continue to build care centers. If they're hurting this bad, stop building. Stop building more urgent care centers. You have an emergency room, you have the clinics. I don't know how many emergency care centers I've seen going up from South Lake, which is not in our district, to North Lake. I will not support revisiting the tentative millage rate. So we need to take a vote, I guess. Or motion.
Do you mind hearing some more comments?
Yeah, more
Yeah.
comments on that. On that, collectively, the clinics that are being put in other places, I'm not in the business mindset of the hospital, but I'm sure they're trying to meet needs where people are at. And I don't know what their financial, they're looking for long-term help in the community. So what they're investing in their community for dollars, I hope it makes sense for them. I hope it makes sense for our community. 15 years ago, we didn't have clinics for people to go to, and these monies that have been set aside have prepared them to get to a point where that makes sense for them to invest back into our community. So I'm not an advocate for the hospital. I'm just saying it's, in order to invest in your community, you have to spend money. And I don't know if the money's coming from, what collectively it's coming from, donors or the tax move, but that's a business decision they have to make to help our community.
And I'll let you up, Mr. Braun, in just a second. I'm going to rebuttal again on that. I'm not against funding the indigent. I've told you all many years in a row, I have family members that are indigent. But I also have friends that have health insurance that's come to me, and they repeatedly get harassed for payment, and they're not open for negotiation. They have their copay. Yes, we all know we all have a copay if we have health insurance, but they are harassed to no end for their money. Instead of the hospitals working with these people, and I've referred them. I'm saying, go to the financial department and tell them your need. And they get nowhere. And I am not against funding the indigent. I am against the way we automatically assume that just because our taxpayers, and I'm a no-tax person, but I'm willing to give some money, but it is not fair I feel like the taxpayers are being taken advantage of. And yes, they may have health insurance, but they're still being taken advantage of. And I will not, like I said, will not revisit the higher millage.
Barbara, may I speak?
Sure.
Okay. I want one factual correction, too. I believe Mr. Berry said it costs about the cost of 2 gallons of milk. The facts are in North Lake County is about 200,000 people, approximately. What the total amount proposed was $18 million. You do simple math, that's $90 a person. Family of 4, $360. I know milk's expensive at Publix, but it's not that expensive. That's about $30, a month as opposed to $8. But regardless, the big point with this is my issue is principle driven. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not okay with incrementalism. As maybe you know, I'm a big pro-life guy, and it took 50 years, but they finally got there in some ways. So I'm not okay with incrementalism. I have a heart for the clinics. I do wish I could get past the principle and say it's okay. I still don't think it's okay to tax people to support even wonderful things they're doing a job for pennies on the dollar compared to what the big hospitals are, right? I think people there's life's choices in Lake County. They raise about $500 million, and they don't come here and ask us for a penny. And some of these folks don't even ask for that much. So they can raise it if they choose to, if they get out and work. And 2 years ago, when I told you my position, I suggested you do that. Whether any of you have made any strides in that, I don't know. And ultimately, you may be okay and don't need to, but you probably ought to consider getting money anywhere you can, any way you can, legally. So that's my point, Barbara. That's why I can't get with you. But I will throw out a number. If you want to throw out a number, I'll go with 0.25. I think that completely funds the clinics. It might leave a few dollars for the hospital. It might not. But, we got to start somewhere for discussion and move forward with this. So I'm going to throw out, if you allow me to make a motion for 0.25, and we'll go from there next week.
Madam Chairman, if I could add something.
Please.
I hope we're all friends here, as Ralph
We are.
said. I certainly love you all.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate your opinions. We all have them. They're kind of like noses. Everybody has one. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with. But we have to put all of our opinions aside. We have to put our likes and our dislikes aside. We have to put what we personally want and our experiences. We all have good and bad experiences with hospitals and with doctors. My wife's been in the hospital 5 times this year already. And so we can all have those stories. But the bottom line is, we were not elected and put here, and we did not take an oath that we would only support clinics. We took an oath that we would support the hospitals and the clinics, both of them, and that we would provide this care. And you know, I don't know how we can just say, I don't like hospitals, so I'm not going to fund them. We took an oath to fund them.
That's not what I'm saying. I had already proposed, I already said that I would not go higher than 0.25, and I will stick with that. And I will give you the breakdown. It is fully fund the clinics, fully fund LifeStream, and then 1.7 million to each hospital, so the hospitals would receive the funds as dictated. And there is nothing in 1299 that says that we have to do 1 mil. It says may do up to 1 mil. For the last, before I got on this board, it was a rubber stamp.
Amen.
Amen. That's exactly right. Rubber stamp, rubber stamp, rubber stamp. It's time to stop rubber stamping.
Amen.
Can we get away from mills and talk about dollars, maybe?
The what?
That's what mills represent.
Get away from the millage rate and talk about the dollars. We're at the 4 that you have proposed and that the board voted on, we're $906,000 short of reimbursing the hospitals and clinics what they've spent. How can we in good conscience do that?
Mr. Hurley, I go to sleep at night because in my heart, I believe that we have to be giving back to both. We give to the indigent, we give to the private sector, private payers, our insurance carriers. I go to sleep at night because I've done what I feel is the correct thing to do. It's not a matter, I am not advocating for anyone except the citizens of Lake County, of North Lake County. I have had more people tell me they don't want to pay any tax at all to this hospital district than I ever have. People are saying willingly, please take my money. I've had more people tell me no than so I look at their opinion and I try not to put my personal opinion in there because I've had some personal experiences also, but that's not what this is about. This is about the people that are sitting here asking for the money, and it's also about the people that are sitting here that don't want to pay the money to the North Lake Hospital District. I'm trying to find the happy medium, and that happy medium for me is 0.25, fully fund the clinics. I think the clinics, and I know that we have some people here that say the clinics are important, but they're not really important because they can't do this and they can't do that. I have been advocating that our indigent people, citizens of North Lake County, they need training on to how to take care of themselves to prevent them from going to a hospital emergency room. And I know, don't laugh at me, Mr. Braun. I will ask you to leave if you do it again. I'm in control of this meeting, so don't laugh at me, okay? I will have the best interest of both people, and I feel like I'm being very fair. A few years ago, we went to 0 mil. And that's because there was over $5 million left in the kitty from the year before. And I said, why do we retax the people that already been taxed and we didn't use the money? And of course, we have COVID and blah, blah, blah. And that's a whole nother story because I know that certain entities probably got some COVID money to help them. So that's another story. That's beyond what we're doing. But when I sit up here, I'm not out for the hospitals, not out for the clinics. I'm out for the indigent and the people that have not self-pay, but have insurance and still can't afford to go to the hospital because of what they're going to owe, which means they get harassed because they're not paying it. So that's where I can go to sleep at night and lay my head on the pillow and fall asleep, because I'm not trying to cheat anybody out of money. But when you do a budget, when we have entities come and ask us for money to help support them, everybody asks for money. Doesn't mean you're going to get all that you ask for. You know, our cities, people will come and ask them for money. They start at a high budget and they chop, 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 chop. County commissioners start at a high budget, chop, 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 chop. That's what we do. And I'm sorry, I respect you tremendously. I've known you for a long time, and I respect everyone on this board. But to be fair to all the people, I just feel this is the right thing for me to do, not for anyone else, but for me. Mr. Smith?
If I could add one thing and maybe, draw a little clarity. I did a little research and was checking on YouTube, and I found a forum where Red Apples Media had 3 people representing different hospitals and clinics some time back. And there was a gentleman who was very honest and frank. I don't recall who he voted for, who he represented rather, but he actually acknowledged, and the interviewer, who, by the way, Red Apples Media gets funded by both the major hospitals. He did an excellent job, I thought. He's very honest, and I was a little worried he wouldn't be. But the guy said something about, funding the amenities for the hospital, and the guy says, well, I thought it was for indigent care. And he said something to the effect that, well, it's basically, we use it for leverage. In other words, they can move the monies around. Indigent care will be provided, has been provided. Mr. Braun acknowledged that a couple of years ago, so did Mr. Jimenez. The bottom line, nobody is going to suffer or die at the hospital, even though we've heard these, not recently, thank God, but in the past, I'd see these things, oh, well, my child would have died if this wouldn't have been for Northlake Hospital. One other thing they said kind of confused me, contradicted me. One of the guys in there said, people don't know they got money from the hospital district. Yet these people doing the anecdotal stuff are saying, oh, I know they got it from the hospital, but that's a whole other issue. The bottom line is, though, the indigent will not suffer if we do away with everything. Now, and I'm talking about in regards to the hospitals. The clinics, a little bit harder thing. With my head, I can't support them, okay? With my heart, I do. I'd actually rather see us raise money for them going forward. But like I said, I'm okay with 0.25. We move the needle, we get it closer to what it should be. And in the meantime, maybe they'll start getting creative and figuring out how to fund ourselves in the future. Matter of fact, I'd write a check to them, help them out, because they're good people. But at the end of the day, when I'm being forced to pay taxes on my property, why bother? I'm having to do it anyway. And by the way, if 60% of the people support this, $18 million, that's what, you should get $11 million out of all those that want to be their brother's keepers, right? So I'm a little confused by where the need for the money is. Are they only willing to give it if they're forced to because it's on their property tax, or are they willing to write a check? Maybe they don't really know what they were voting for. That's actually what I think happened.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Braun, you may come up and address us, please.
Thank you. I'd like to apologize if you think I was laughing at you. I was not. So I don't know what the outburst was for. But
He was laughing at me.
I was not laughing at all.
No, it's okay.
In fact, I don't think this.
I deserve it.
I don't think this is a very funny topic, actually. And I don't know what the anger is about this topic, but you apparently are very angry about it. But since you decided to quote me or try to interpret my statements, I think it's only fair that I have the opportunity to clarify my statements that were grossly misunderstood. In fact, most of our statements spoken by the people who run the hospitals and the clinics and provide the care to the community are grossly misunderstood by some, apparently. Yes, indigent care, you got that part right. They'll continue to get care. What you don't have right is that I said it would always be the same care. And I don't know how many times I can explain it or how better to explain it, but if you don't fund and you don't have healthy hospital systems, and remember, we spend on unfunded and underfunded care well over $20 million a year. So yes, the tax district money, no, let me finish, Ralph, because you invoked me as your defense, and I don't think that was fair or right.
I just like.
And you know, the 2 to 3 million is very important because our operating margins don't cover. So basically, if you had a business that made zero margin, so at the end of the day, you had no profits in your business, and then you had to replace something or build something, or staff needed raises because the market demanded you to get more nurses because you can't find them, how would you do that? And over time, if you continued to have no profit over time, what would happen? The care would probably get less. And so my point has been always to everyone that will listen is that you fund these hospitals just like you fund your roads and your fires and your schools because they're important to your community, not because there's some handout that you think is happening. They are a major community asset. And rather if this didn't exist or you weren't giving money, I would tell you that your hospitals are right up there with your schools. They're right up there with your fire departments. They're right up there with everything else you want to have in a growing, thriving economic community. I sit on an economic development board for this county. I fight for growth and economic growth in this county. Why? It's because we can all have better lives. But let me tell you, no business is going to come to a county that has substandard hospitals. So you think that the money is just being handed out, has no purpose. There's a bigger purpose, a bigger picture that I have for years tried to explain, the bigger picture, right? The forest for the trees, so to speak, right? We have to see the forest for the trees. There is so much more important. It is a small tax. I do agree. Ralph, listen, I agree with you. And Barbara, I agree with you that we should not put a mill at this point in time because that's a lot of money. I agree with that. But to say I'm just not going to fund the hospitals, I do not agree. I totally disagree. I think there's a disconnect on understanding how this works. And should we get rid of Medicare? Let's get rid of Medicare, right? Why do we have Medicare? We should probably get rid of that. That's a tax. It helps our elderly patients take care of their bills. Why should we do that? It just doesn't, again, because the reason we don't, and the reason that probably, we think Medicare was created because we care about our elderly. Let me tell you, Medicare was created because it's important to have a health system, a health structure. Because if you're a country without a health structure and people are dying in the streets, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if you think about it, if you don't have a way to provide for the cost of this care that happens everywhere, it's a bad outcome eventually. So you're doing your part. It's a little part, but it's an important part. And every little thing has to happen. So understand what happens. So if we don't have this funding, yes, we will try to collect money because at the end of the day, we can't continue to provide health care to everyone if we don't make a profit. We can't. We cannot. We're not a business just like any other business. If you don't make a profit, you will go out of business. And as far as building more clinics, come to our ED. Come to one of our EDs on a Saturday night when it's packed full of people and wonder why we build outpatient clinics to help handle that amount of extra people. There are so much need in the community. That's why we build them. We don't build them if no one's going to come to them. We build them because they need places to go. And you want that. Again, it's important to the economic stability of a county. It's the bigger picture. What other things did I hear that I needed to try to help address? You have a motion right now. You're arguing whether you're wanting to reduce it to 2.5. You've already made a motion to set it at the 0.4 that you tentatively set. That's the motion. There's no changing it.
We do have the option to change it. We do have the option, but I'd like to ask you one more question.
Yeah, sure.
Just so that we know. So there are so many counties in the state of Florida that do not have a hospital taxing district. So what do those
county-
communities
so-
do? And South Lake dissolved theirs,
Right.
but they seem to be functioning just well. As a matter of fact, I believe there's a new
Okay, well-
Advent emergency care put up on Highway 50.
I-
I know that's not you.
No, no, no,
get
no, I
that.
know. I'm-
But so my question is, I've been in your emergency room at midnight. I know exactly what you're talking about. And you're building, let's say you're building these new emergency centers. So I guess my question is, at what point do you transport someone from that emergency center to the hospital?
Well, I'm not a medical. I don't want to.
Okay, that
Yeah, I don't
that was
wanna
just a
make
question.
Yeah,
I
no, I
thought.
don't want to make a
just-
medical opinion, but think about it. If people, we don't control people getting sick.
No.
We have no way of controlling who gets sick, how they get sick, whether they have a heart attack, a stroke, whatever it is. But if people didn't need them, we wouldn't build them. There would be no reason to build them if people didn't need them. It just wouldn't be a reason to build them if people didn't need them. So, but to your question, and we're not the only county. Halifax still has their tax districts.
Yes, and I know.
Right, Halifax,
County has 3 or 4.
right,
taxing
but
districts.
Volusia County has them. There are several others, and a lot of the counties, the bigger cities, which we've tried to explain, the payer mix is different, right? The bigger cities, including Claremont, they are not living off of 80% Medicare and Medicaid. So when that indigent patient comes into Claremont, they have 30 to 40% commercial payers making up the difference. We do not have that in Lake County. So I've often asked you, do you see for-profit hospitals in Lake County? Name one for-profit hospital in Lake County. Now go to Miami, go to Orlando, go to Tampa, you see them. You see the for-profits. And the reason they are there,
Who's in Orlando or for profit, do you know?
HCA's there,
Okay.
Abel, who else is there? There is the big one. HCA is one of the biggest for-profit hospital corporations in
And they're-
America.
They're popping up everywhere? Is that correct?
But they're not building hospitals. You know what HCA is doing? HCA is building a freestanding emergency room in
Right, like-
your county. And you know why they're doing that? They're doing that because they're going to pull more commercial payers, not because they're going to treat indigent, not because they're going to treat Medicare. They're going to take the paying patients and they're going to put the hospitals even in worse. Your not-for-profit hospitals, your community assets. If you understand what a not-for-profit is, it's a community asset. If we go away, you know the property down in Eustis, when Advent Health left Eustis, did they get a dime for that property? Did they sell that property? No. That property was donated to Eustis, and Eustis is using it now for I think I don't go down there, but you know the property where Waterman used to be. That property turned into a community asset. If we go out of business tomorrow, every single piece of property that Leesburg Regional Medical Center owns reverts back to the city and becomes a city property. There are no owners. It is a community asset. It is our community. The community owns these hospitals. And I know I'm getting a little frustrated and probably should be a little more calm, but it's 20 years of this. 20 years. And to hear you say they rubber stamp stuff is just wrong, because you know what they did? It is wrong, Ralph. I have sat here for 20 years. How many years have you sat here?
Mr. Braun, Mr.
I have.
Wrong.
Smith,
It's
please.
wrong.
It used to be
I
15
do have
minutes
a
in and out,
question.
let's go to the bar. That's how it used to be.
It is wrong. Ever since Larry Metz's bill went into place,
Thank you.
there was not a rubber stamp. And that was the years you were talking about. You were just talking about the years after Larry Metz. And ever since Larry Metz's bill, it has not been rubber stamped. The good people of the board that made the system, God rest his soul, Ken, created that system. Very good guy.
With Larry.
And you know what they would do? They would sit here and they would listen to the hospital's presentations before they set any tentative millage. They would listen to the presentations. They would gather the information. And they made a decision based on that. They did not rubber stamp it. They made the decision because the need is there and the audits showed and the amount was there. We submitted $2.8 million worth of indigent care to just the residents, not counting all the other stuff, the indigent care we do, but just that qualified. So we We submitted this time 2.8. We got 2.7. So when you say, oh, we only need 1.3, no, we submitted 2.8 this time. So, yeah. So no, it was not rubber stamp. That's not true. But I'm happy to answer any more questions. I think I've probably overstated my point at this point. But I mean, I'm sorry. After 20 years, I've watched the evolution. I was there. I worked with Larry, even though he didn't want to work with me. I worked with Larry. He didn't tell me about the bill. He tried to surprise it on us. So you're talking about sneaky? He tried to surprise the bill so nobody had a chance to vote on it or have a public hearing on it. He was just going to pass it. And that is the other thing that I wanted to say about the vote. In 2016, where were all the people who didn't want it? They didn't outnumber the people who did want it. And you can say, you got elected and that's more important than the referendum. I know that's how you believe.
Mhm.
But you know what? Elected officials come and go.
That's right.
And, how do we do amendments in this country when we want to amend constitutions and we want to amend our state constitution? We do it through a referendum, right? Because we believe a referendum's the best way. That's what we believe. I think you believe that. And in order to get rid of an amendment, what do? We have a referendum. The legislature can't just get rid of an amendment. They can't just get rid of something that the people voted on just because they got elected. They can't do it. That's not how our government works. But you want it to work that way.
We are a republic, not a direct democracy, and that's why we elect representatives to make these.
To create law.
decisions,
To
take
create
those
law.
down.
Yeah.
And by the way, as I recall, I'm glad you acknowledged Larry's great work, but as I recall, the hospital interests at that time fought like tooth and nail against anything other than an automatic mill. So it was rubber stamped prior to that. Since then, you may have an argument that these men may have looked at real close, but it was coincidental. Every year it was 1.0, 1.0, 1.0, and then finally it was 0.895. So we saw a little bit of movement then. That was a positive, and that's when Barbara got on. Right?
And property taxes went up, and it made less sense to have a full mill. And we have said, and I have said for 20 years, and you can go back and if you can find transcripts and tapes, I said, the day that the hospitals don't have the indigent care, the day they aren't providing it, the day they make money off of that, and the day that the property taxes go higher than what we have, I am all for, and we should keep the millage at a rate that makes sense. And we should not just keep passing one millage. We agree on that. But we also should fund what is there. And that means not 0.25, sorry. And it doesn't mean 1 mil. It means compromise, right? And that's probably the 0.4 that you originally set.
One analogy you made, which, and if I misrepresented you on part of that, and I apologize, but I will tell you this. One analogy you made was you're comparing it to roads, police. It's not quite the same. I do understand it's a community asset, but it's not owned by the government. It's not a state highway that we have to pay taxes to improve and all.
Watch your hospitals owned by the government, Ralph.
And no, I don't. No, I don't. But that's why it shouldn't be
Universal
that's why it
healthcare.
should be an automatic ad valorem tax, which comes out of everybody's
I don't want
pay.
my government running my hospital.
I'd rather, if y'all are going to be funded by tax dollars, I'd rather see a gas tax or something.
You know how, wait. Who owns the turnpike, Ralph?
Huh?
Who owns the turnpike?
Not me. Oh, I thought you said dirt bike.
No, the turnpike. Who owns the turnpike?
Turnpike.
That we pay taxes for. Wait, and who owns the turnpike?
I believe the state of Florida does. Am I
They
incorrect?
do it through a joint partnership, right? That's what this is. This is a partnership. This is a private government partnership, which is exactly how more things should be done in
But
this country.
they get funded through tolls, not through ad valorem taxes.
They did not always get funded through tolls, and they do get ad valorem taxes. Look it up. They get some money.
And they're-
Their leadership is supported by tax dollars. It's a joint. There's quasi-government partnerships all over the world for stuff like this, for hospitals, and there's fire services that are semi-private.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
I'm going to
Thank you.
call,
Prisons.
we had a motion for the .4. I need a second.
It was 0.25 I made the motion for.
No, I think Mr. Hurley.
Oh, okay, did he? I'm sorry.
So I need a second for .4.
Hurley, did you make a motion for
He did. Well, no, he made a motion to, okay, so
I made the motion for .25. They said the .4 is invalid, so based on that argument.
Excuse me, I think we have a motion on the floor to
Yes.
adopt the resolution at .40.
That was the original and second by Ricky.
That's the original
Okay.
motion on the floor.
That was the original.
And we got into a discussion
Okay.
of that particular
Is that
motion.
due to this resolution that we've got before us?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
So we have a first and a second already, correct?
I'm asking if we had a second on the .4. I know we had a
Okay, then I need a second motion for the .4 millage.
Who made the first motion?
Mr. Hurley, with his negotiation of well, wait a minute, we probably need to go back.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Okay, so we need a second for that.
So we're making a second on Mr. Hurley's position on the .4 mil?
No, to go back to
Nullify.
negotiation for millage.
Is that
Correct.
correct, Josh?
Correct.
Right. I need a second for that. Okay, no second, so it fails. Is that correct?
That's correct. Can I have a clarification, please, Josh? I know we discussed in his motion of nullifying the previous proposed millage. Was there not a motion for the .40 in the resolution that I read?
I don't
That's
think
my
there
question.
was.
That's what I'm asking
Yeah, I
Josh,
don't think
please.
there was.
Okay.
So we're back to the motion of Mr. Hurley's. There wasn't a second, so it fails.
failed.
So now I need a motion for the .4 millage. I need a motion for,
I want to make a motion for .25 since.
we have to go through this first since we've already.
Did anybody make, why do we have to do .4? We've already nullified it, so it's of no consequence. So we can start at 0 or 1, right?
It hasn't been nullified.
It hasn't
I
been
don't think
nullified.
it's
That was
nullified,
just
Mr.
Mr.
Smith.
Hurley's, we just
Okay.
need a motion for the .4 millage at this point.
So moved.
I need a second.
I second it.
All in favor?
I think I have to do a separate vote.
Oh, separate vote. Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
Ms. Hooper? Ms. Hurley? Mr. Hurley, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Ms. Price?
No,
Mr. Smith?
No.
Okay,
motion fails.
correct.
Now, Mr. Smith, if you wanted.
All right, I'm going to make a
What you
motion
want.
for .25.
I'll second it.
Going to have any discussion on it?
Any discussion?
I'm confused.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Kirsty?
We were told when we passed the 4 that it could not be changed.
No, we weren't told that. We
It can't go up.
can't go up.
Go down, not up.
I stand corrected. Sorry.
That's- 3. 4 to conduct business, 4 for a quorum. Majority passes the bill. Okay, I'm sorry, I think I have to take a roll call. Mr. Harper? Ms. Hooper? Yes, we are.
No, I retract mine. I thought you just called my name.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm not doing roll call. I'm voting on a motion right now of .25. I have to do this by separate vote. The motion is a .25 mil. So I'm separate vote. Mr. Harper?
No.
Ms. Hooper? Mr. Hurley?
No.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
So now you need to read that resolution, is that correct?
By title only on 2023-02.
Correct.
Resolution of the North Lake County Hospital District providing for the adoption of the proposed budget for the 2023-2024 fiscal year.
We need, okay, we need any more public comment on this? I see no public comment. Okay, board action, do we have any further discussion on this? I see none. I'm going to, one more time, do we have any board action on this? I see none.
So you have a motion?
I need a motion for the 2.25?
No, this is for the approving of the
Oh, the-
budget, the tentative budget.
Oh, the tentative budget. Okay, I need a motion to approve the tentative budget of .25. Is
So
that-
move.
We would.
Yeah.
Yes. You
I need a second.
Okay,
A roll call, please.
yes. Mr. Harper?
No.
Ms. Hooper? Yes. Mr. Hurley?
No.
Ms. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion passes 3-2, correct? Okay. So is that all we have? I believe it's,
Other than just to make a note that the next meeting is next Thursday, the 21st at 5:30.
And what we'll be addressing then?
That will be the final approval of the millage rate and the final approval of the budget.
Is that 5:30?
It is at 5:30. Yes, Phil?
Actual budget. It looks to me as if due to a large I think, correct me on the budget, due to a large carryover from last year, plus some of the clinics not submitting enough for their funding, plus, I think that's the main pluses. There looks to be still 1.2 million to allocate to the hospitals or the clinics, whoever submits the bills.
Right.
And like I said earlier, we submitted, as I understand, 2.8. So there's about another 100,000 in claims that we submitted, and I don't know Waterman's numbers, but I'm guessing they have as well.
my recommendation, for the board, not today because we're done, but the extra monies left over, those monies on top of what the .25 will offer to the hospitals get divided between the hospitals. So you'll get more than 1.7.
Well, the 2.5 already has enough money to allocate more than 1.7. In fact, it allocates 3 million to the hospitals,
No, it
Yes,
doesn't.
it
Not
does.
the 2.5.
according to the budget that you just passed.
It-
But regardless, I think
No, it's-
the providers, if I can, I think the providers, since that money was allocated for this year, I think the providers would, since they submitted claims over those numbers, I think you should fund the claims that were submitted. I mean, it's not going to use it all, but it'll use quite a bit, and it's there. I mean, and you should allocate it. That's what the bill would say you should do.
I would not have a problem with that. If you recall 2 years ago, whenever we had the extra money left,
It
and we went
happens.
zero, most of the board at the time wanted to just save the money and give it to the clinics in subsequent years. And I thought, no, that's not right, because based on Mr. Jimenez's and my conversation, he said, well, you wean us off of it. And I thought, well, there's 2.2 million. Let's give 1.1 to both of them, right?
Well, I think the
I mean,
problem is.
we shouldn't be sitting around money in the bank that you
Right.
guys can be using. That's not our job, definitely.
I agree.
I think we agree on that.
Yeah, okay, we do, Ralph, we agree on something.
Yeah, go Gators.
Well, there you go, we don't agree again.
No other business, ask if they have any other.
Does the board have any other business that they need to discuss tonight? I see none. Meeting adjourned.